Who else was home with you?
My husband and my daughter.
And what were you all doing that evening?
We were downstairs in the living room.
And obviously, I'm going to ask you about something that happened outside the residence. At that time, when something happened outside, what were you and your husband and your daughter doing at that time?
We were in the living room watching TV, and my husband was fixing the coffee table that we just bought that day.
He was actually building it?
Building it in the living room, yes.
In terms of the townhouse or townhome, is it a two-level?
Yes.
And are the bedrooms upstairs?
Yes.
Does your living room area where you were face the backyard of what's been referred to as a courtyard or a walkway? If you were to look out your backyard, do you have a sliding glass door in the back?
Yes.
Okay. And if you were to look out, is there what's been referred to either a dog walk, or a courtyard of some type?
Yes.
Okay. At that time, was it already dark outside?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of the weather conditions, how would you describe them that night?
A little rainy.
Okay. Now at around 7:05, 7:10, 7:15, did you hear some noise outside?
Yes.
Okay. And if you could, describe to the jury from your perspective the noise you heard, what you describe it as best you can.
I heard a howling sound.
And you're actually using the word howling like a dog howling?
Yes.
Okay. When you heard that, what did you do?
I looked out the sliding door.
Okay. When you first looked out, were you able to see something distinctly?
No.
Okay. And why was that?
It was too dark.
When you looked out the first time, did your husband say something to you like regarding whether you should be looking out the window or not, or a sliding door?
No.
Okay. Now, at some point, did you hear more noises?
Yes.
Okay. If you could describe to the jury in terms of the noises you heard a second time, and let me backtrack a second, I apologize. You heard a howling sound. You looked out, you didn't see anything. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Then you heard some additional noises?
Yes.
Okay. Were you timing in terms of how long the difference is, or?
No.
Okay. If you can estimate, was that within minutes, seconds, hours that you heard the first noise, and then you heard the howling sound, and you heard some additional noises?
After I heard the howling sound, I
Yes.
sort of forgot about it, and then I heard a closer sound that sounded like a help sound.
Okay. All right. And
After I heard the howling sound, I forgot about it, and then I heard the yelling of help.
so let's make sure all the jurors heard that. You first heard the howling, and then you forgot about it, and then you heard another voice sounded like
A help.
a help. Okay. I apologize. Sometimes that microphone, either you're too close or too far. Sometimes it's hard for people to hear. Did you look out the sliding door or the window at that time?
Yes.
And did you observe something going on outside?
Yes.
Okay, all right. If, as best you can, describe to the jury, and I know, let me backtrack a second. I know at some point, how many times total did you look out? More than once? I'm assuming out the...
Yes, more than once.
Could it have been 2 or 3 times? Do you have a vivid recollection how many times you looked out?
I know I looked out when I heard the howling sound. I looked out when I heard the help sound. I looked out when I saw people on the ground.
Okay, all right.
2 people on the ground.
Okay, all right. At some point, when you heard the howling sound, you looked out, you didn't see anything. Then you heard voices again, or you heard help.
Mm-hmm.
Did you
Yes.
look out at that time?
Yes.
Okay. At that time, did you see somebody out there? What did you see?
After I heard the help,
Yeah.
I didn't see anything. I sat down, and I heard, I don't know, it caught my attention.
Okay.
And when
tell us if you can, when you say it caught your attention, what do you mean by that?
I guess struggling, I don't know, noises.
Okay.
I looked out. That's when I saw them on the ground, and I saw my neighbor.
Okay, all right. Let me backtrack a second, so make sure the sequence, the jury understands sequence. You heard the howling sound, didn't see anything. You looked out at or you heard some other sound. You looked out, you didn't really see anything, but you heard a struggle outside. If you can't elaborate on that, when you say struggle, what do you mean by that?
Like noise.
Okay.
Noising. Like rumbling.
Okay. Like a rumbling or grumbling or I don't know.
Like strugglings.
Okay, like a struggle. Okay. And then you didn't see anything distinct. And then what? You looked up. Did you go back and sit down, or what did you do?
After the howling, I looked. I didn't see anything.
Okay.
I heard help.
Okay.
I didn't see anything. I looked out again, and I saw them there, and I saw my neighbor.
All right. So this is the third time in terms of looking out, or whatever time it is. You're looking out. You see him. Tell us what you saw out there at that time.
It was dark, so I know I saw two people on the grass, one laying down, one on top, and I saw my neighbor came out from his sliding door. I remember him saying, "Are you guys okay? Do you want me to call 911?"
And when you say you saw a neighbor that came out from a sliding door, obviously a neighbor means somewhere near where you live. Was it your next door neighbor in the same building you are, across, or to the side, or where was that?
Across.
Okay. And did you know that neighbor's name at the time?
No.
Do you know that neighbor's name now?
No.
Okay. And when you say across, was it directly across from where you are, or was it an angle across?
It was an angle.
Okay. You mentioned the neighbor came out, said something. What happened then?
And that's when my husband told me to sit down, mind my own business.
Okay. And did you do that, or did you stay out there?
I just sat down. Like,
Okay. All right. Then what happened?
Then I heard the shot.
Okay. Now, in terms of when you observed somebody on the ground, could you tell whether it was one person or two people at the ground?
Two.
Okay. And if you can describe to the jury what you observed, when you say on the ground, what were the two individuals on the ground doing? And how were they positioned to the best of your recollection?
One is on top of the other. The one on top is moving his hand, arms.
Okay. You're describing something with the hands, or you're demonstrating to the jury, I should say, moving something with his hands. Can you tell exactly what the person was doing on top with his hands?
Like he's hitting him.
Okay, like he's hitting. Okay, and then what?
Then that's what I saw.
Okay. Could you tell it was somebody, the other person, could you tell whether the person was below, on the bottom of that person that was hitting, or on top, or on the side, or where?
I know the top is just hitting down.
Okay. Could you see the person in the bottom clearly in terms of what position that person was in?
Just laying down.
Laying down? Okay. And the person on top, was the person on top lying down, standing? I know you're saying on the ground. How was that person positioned, the person on top?
I don't know. It was dark.
Okay. In terms of I gather because it was dark, were you able to see their faces?
No.
Were you able to see any kind of clothing that they were wearing?
No, but I can tell.
Okay. In terms of their size, were you able to tell whether one person was bigger than the other?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of who was bigger than the other from your vantage point, the person on top or the person on the bottom?
After seeing the news,
Okay.
I can compare, and I can tell you.
Let me interject, Your Honor. If she's going to
I need
be
a legal objection, not a speaking.
improper foundation for her testimony, Your Honor.
Counsel needs to approach, please. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Benalla, you were describing the two individuals in terms of, and I was asking you, in terms of the difference between the two individuals, could you tell that one was different than the other in terms of their appearance, their height, weight, or their size?
When I saw them there, I didn't care about the size. All I know, I saw a shadow.
When I saw them there,
I didn't care about what the size. I don't know if it's I don't care if it's a female. All I know is two of them there. But to be specific right now, after seeing the news, yes, the top is bigger than the bottom.
And is that based on, you saw Mr. Zimmerman on the news?
Yes.
Okay. And you saw the physique or of the person that got killed, Trayvon Martin, in terms of his size?
Yes.
And is your opinion then that the person on top was Mr. Zimmerman because he's bigger?
Objection, Your Honor. Leading.
Just a leading.
What is your opinion as to who the person on top was? Was it the bigger person or the slighter person?
Asked and answered, Your Honor.
What is your opinion as to who was on top?
I believe it was Zimmerman, comparing the size of their body.
And you mentioned that at that time when they were on the ground, you mentioned hitting. Did you actually see the hands hitting the other person, or did you see movement with the hands when they were struggling?
I see movement.
Okay. In terms of you heard the help or something to that effect, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you remember how many times you heard help?
More than once.
Okay. And from your vantage point, could you tell who was screaming or asking for help? Could you tell which one of the two individuals?
No idea.
You also mentioned, I believe, that the first sounds you heard, and then you heard additional sounds, and the howling sound first. Did the sound to you, from the howling to the final sounds, did they appear to be getting closer to where you were or further away?
The howling sound was farther away, and the help sound is closer.
And from your vantage point in your residence, the howling sound you said further away, could you tell in what direction, whether it was to the north, east, west, could you tell, or just that it was further away?
Let's say I'm looking out my sliding door right now. When I look to peek, the howling sound is that way,
Okay, to the right somewhere?
to the right somewhere.
Okay, all right. Can you tell how far away it was at all?
No.
Okay. And you mentioned that the cries for help or whatever help was more than once. Did you count how many times exactly?
I didn't count.
You mentioned your husband told you something to get away from the window. You did. Is that correct?
Yes.
At some point, did you hear some kind of shot?
I heard the shot before I looked out.
Okay. All right. Do you remember which time in terms of from a sequence standpoint?
No.
Okay. When you heard a shot, were you still inside your residence?
Yes.
Did you ever go outside at all?
No.
Did your husband go outside?
Yes.
When he heard the shot, did he go outside before you heard the shot or after you heard the shot?
He went outside. Okay. When I heard the shot, I looked out the sliding door, told my husband, someone got shot, and he went out.
Okay. So let's make sure the jury heard that in terms of understanding exactly what you said. You heard a shot, you looked outside at that time?
I heard a shot, I looked out, told my husband, and he went out.
Okay. When you heard the shot and you looked out, what did you see out there?
The one laying down.
Okay.
That's all I remember.
Okay. That's all you remember? Did your husband then go outside?
Yes.
And do you recall, did he go outside through the sliding door, or did he in the back, or did he go out the front, or do you know?
We have 3 doors to enter. We have the front sliding door and the door to go to the garage. He went out the garage door.
And at some point, did the police arrive out there?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever go outside that night and talk to the police?
No.
Did your husband at some point stay outside?
He stayed outside.
That night, after the police arrived, did your husband at some point come inside the house and get something?
Yes,
Okay, and you recall what that was?
a plastic bag.
And how do you know it was a plastic bag?
Because when my husband went back, he asked for a plastic bag. The paramedic was asking for a plastic bag.
And do you recall what type of plastic bag it was?
It's a Walmart bag.
Is that a white Walmart bag?
We had a gray one,
Okay.
gray Walmart bag.
It's a Walmart bag, whatever color?
Yeah,
Okay. How did you know it was a Walmart bag?
because that's where I go.
Okay. All right, I'm going to show you some photographs, and hopefully you'll be able to see it on the screen right here. Let me show you State's Exhibit, thank you, Your Honor. State's Exhibit number 1, and you recognize that as the retreat at Twin Lakes. It's a Google type view. I'm going to focus on a part of it. Hopefully I don't mess up in doing this. Would your residence have been right here in the corner right here?
Yes,
Okay. And in terms of your backyard, it would be facing out this. Is this the courtyard we're talking about?
yes,
Okay. And when you observed what was going on outside at the point where they're on the ground, I'm going to kind of move this arrow around. You tell me where and what area. I'm going to move it around. Do you recall what area it was in relation to your backyard? And I've got some photographs to show you, but I just wanted to get the perspective. Was it this area right here?
on the other side of the sidewalk.
On this, is this the sidewalk on the other
Yes.
side? So on this side?
Yes.
Okay. And you recall where on this side approximately it was?
The second house.
Right here?
Right there.
Is it, am I pointing it to the area right here?
Yes,
Okay. The person that you described coming outside their back and saying something to the two individuals, which house? Is it this one in the corner, this one down? Do you recall?
I believe the second house.
Right here, this house right here? Am I pointing to that area?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Huh? Oh, double click. Ma'am, I apologize for the record. That was State's Exhibit number 1. State's Exhibit number 3. Can you see your house at all, or where you used to live? Can you see it at all in that photograph?
Can I see my house?
Yeah. Would your house be over here in the dark over there? Is what I'm trying to get. You can't. Can you see? You can't see your house from there.
No.
Okay. State's Exhibit number 5. Can you see your residence now?
Yes.
Okay. And am I pointing to your residence right here?
Yes.
Okay. That night, while this was going on, do you recall whether your porch light was on as it is in this photograph, State Exhibit number 5?
No, it was not on.
States number 6, would the back of your residence be in this right here? And would you have been facing this way out towards over here where this occurred?
Our residence house, the back looks the same.
Okay.
So,
All right, but what I'm saying is you're looking out into this walkway?
yes.
Okay. Stage Exhibit number 10, would this, to the right of that photograph, would this be your residence here where you lived back
Yes.
then?
Yes.
Okay. And State's Exhibit number 11, would your residence have been this right here in the corner
Yes.
that I'm circling right here?
Yes.
And is this approximately the area, or where was the area where you observed the two individuals you mentioned, Mr. Zimmerman and the other individual? Where were they in relation to, oh, I'm sorry. I apologize, man. I need some assistance. Huh? Sorry. Thank you. I apologize. Your residence right here, where around the two individuals, Mr. Zimmerman and the person you now know as Trayvon Martin, where were they in relation to where your house was? Is this the area where it covered right here, or tell me where? I can't.
Yeah, when I looked out, it was on my left.
I apologize, Your Honor. Thank you. Okay, I won't move it. Tell me where.
Exactly like that. They were there.
Okay. Where this yellow right here is?
Yes.
Okay. State's exhibit number 37, that's a daytime photograph. Would your residence be over here to the corner right here? That
Yes.
I left the cursor or pointer at?
Yes.
Okay. And the area you described where this was going on, was it on this side of the sidewalk that I'm pointing to right here?
Second house. Second house.
Second
yes.
house? Okay. State Exhibit 38, does that just show the courtyard and your residence right here in the corner?
Yes.
Okay. And you're saying second house about right here where I'm pointing to?
Yes.
Okay. State Exhibit 42, is that a close-up of the back of your residence?
Yes.
Okay. And obviously this is daytime, right?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I'm through with the photographs. The court. Permission, may I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Ms. Manalo, back in February of 2012, were you living at, the State State's Exhibit number 139? Would your residence have been 2861?
Yes.
Okay. So this would have been your residence right here?
Yes.
Okay, and your vantage point from looking out would have been through this?
The sliding door. Yes.
I don't have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, you may.
I don't have any further questions.
Okay, thank you, Cross.
I have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, you may.
There. 29.
Good morning.
It's just going to be a couple minutes, okay?
Okay.
It's okay for now. Thank you, Your Honor. So, as you testified, you heard some noise, correct? It was first, I think you said it was a howling noise.
Yes.
And as you're sort of positioning yourself, let's use that picture right there. See where the little bench is?
Yes.
You're actually inside the apartment at that point, right?
Yes.
And you hear the howling, and position myself as though I was inside your house. You heard the howling off to your right, correct?
Correct.
That was the first noise that caught your attention.
Yes.
And then at some point, and we'll go through it a bit more slowly, but at some point when you actually looked out to see two people, they were off to your left a little bit, correct? From here, sort of across the pathway and a touch to your left, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the first howling was to the right, and then the noise was to the left.
It got
Right.
closer.
Closer and to the left. It was further away a little bit as it was when you first heard it, correct?
When I heard the howling, I looked out, didn't see anything. I
Right.
heard the help sound, I looked out, I didn't see anything, but I know it's closer.
Okay. And to, I might approach you also. So just to sort of orient all of us, including the jury, I'm going to put it sort of behind you, if you don't mind turning towards me just a touch. This is you. This is in your house somewhere in here, correct?
Yes.
You heard noise, and I think you said it was somewhere in this area?
Yes.
Does that sound right? You didn't see anything, you just heard.
Yes.
Through the doors that were closed,
Yes.
but you could hear what you identified as a howling.
Yes.
And then the people, when you did look out, I know I'm passing over a couple of your views, and I'll get back to that. But when you finally looked out to see people, you saw them in right about this area?
Yes.
And that was when you saw two people,
Yes.
one on top of the other.
Yes.
And you couldn't see anything or couldn't describe those people back then because it was too dark? I
Yes.
think you said there was no lighting going on
It was,
around?
yes.
Okay. I think you said a moment ago that actually you couldn't see or describe them at all that night, right?
It was dark.
Right, you couldn't see anything. Matter of fact, I think in your direct examination, you said you didn't even know if it was a woman or a man, right?
Yes. At that time, yes.
Right. At the time that you're actually, we'll get to that. When you heard the howling, certainly you didn't know what it was, correct? Okay. You sort of looked out the glass door, didn't see anything, just went back to whatever it was you were doing?
Yes.
Was that watching TV, or do you recall?
Yes, we were watching TV. My husband is rebuilding the coffee table.
Okay. And TV was on then, obviously, and listening to it, the noise of the TV?
Yes.
Okay. And it was raining outside?
Light rain.
Okay. Then you said that you heard something a second time that you sort of described as a help,
Yes.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
Again, could you, I'm going to misuse a word here, could you echolocate where that was coming from? Could you tell where that noise was coming from in relation to what we talked about a moment ago?
I don't remember now.
Okay. But it was certainly outside,
Yes.
in the same general direction?
It was closer.
A little bit closer. So let me ask this, and again, I'm not focusing on to try and orient the jury. The initial noise, again, was in this area. When you say closer, could it have been in this area?
When I heard the howling sound, maybe it's somewhere around there.
Okay,
When I heard the help sound, it got closer.
a little bit closer.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you didn't see anything. When you say closer, does it seem closer to you because it was louder?
Yes.
Okay. So you could tell that it seemed to be moving, the noise source seemed to be moving towards you, or at
Yeah.
least in your direction.
Yes.
Okay. Again, didn't notice anything, didn't see anything, and didn't really pay that much attention to it at that point. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Still back to watching TV?
Yes.
Then
Well,
at some...
When I heard the help, I didn't see anything, and
Right.
I went back watching TV.
Right. Now, at some point, you've taken you've given some statements in this case, right? Talked to officers about what you saw and heard.
Yes.
We took your deposition as well. Remember that?
Yes.
Talked to you about what you saw and heard.
Yes.
Okay. You said the next thing that caught your attention was the shot, right?
Yes.
Okay, that was the very next thing. The help, went back to TV, then you heard the shot. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, and it was when you heard the shot that you then went out the third time, correct?
I didn't go out.
I'm sorry, I apologize, I said out. And what I meant was you just walked to the door the
This-
third time.
I looked out at the sliding door. I don't know. I don't really remember how many times I looked out. When you say third time, all I know is I looked out when I heard the howling sound. I looked out when I heard the help sound. I looked out when I saw them on the ground and my neighbor, and I looked out when there was a shot.
Okay.
That's what I remember.
Do you remember ever saying in your deposition or statement you gave to the police that you had seen a neighbor out there any of the times that you talked?
Yes.
Do you remember telling that to the police?
I got interviewed with a lot of people, and if they didn't ask me question about that, I don't know if I told them.
Okay. Would you then defer to the statement that you gave the police as opposed to your testimony here today as that being more accurate? Let me say it in a way that makes at least a little bit of sense. If there's a difference in your memory here today, would you defer to the statement you gave closer in time to the event?
I still don't understand.
All right, we'll try it one last time. What you told the police back right after it happened, was that as accurate as it could be?
Yes.
Did you give them the information very close in time to when you observed it?
Yes.
Okay. And were you trying to tell them everything that you could tell them about this event?
I try to tell them everything I know on the question they're asking me.
Okay. If your statement to law enforcement, and we'll talk about the one on March 20th, 2012. Remember giving a statement to a Dale Crosby with Florida Department of Law Enforcement in March of 2012?
I remember giving a statement to a lot of people.
Okay. Let me walk you through it slowly then so we don't get, I know that there were a number of them. So may I have a moment, Your Honor? Your Honor, I have the audio tape. I have a transcript that is not official. I'd like to approach the witness with the unofficial transcript rather than take the time for the audio.
Show it to
And see
counsel.
if that would help. With consideration of the state, of course. Just
You gave me two.
sorry. I presume I'm waiting if you want to object.
Okay, direct your comments to the court, not to each other.
My objection is, I understand the purpose of this witness is being provided this is to impeach. Is there no impeachment? I don't know.
I don't know, I just think he's having her review it at this time.
Yeah, take a moment if you would to review that and tell me if you know what that document is.
I remember
Okay,
giving,
is that a transcript of the statement that you gave on March 20th, 2012 at 3:26 to Agent Dale Crosby of Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
I believe so. A lot of people interviewed me. I don't know what time.
I believe so.
I believe so. This is it. A lot
Okay.
of people interviewed me. I don't know exactly who it is.
Great, thank you. If you would take a moment to review it, I want you to acknowledge if those are your words transcribed onto that document.
Okay.
Okay. Do you describe the two individuals anywhere at all? Compare their size or anything in that statement?
What page is it on?
No. I'm wondering whether or not it's there at all.
Objection is not improper, whether the question was even asked. I don't know, this isn't proper impeachment.
You could ask her that and redirect.
Okay, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Do you see anywhere in that statement where you would have advised officers of Florida Department of Law Enforcement that you were able to describe the two individuals that you saw at all?
I said here on the second page.
Go ahead.
I said when I heard a shot, I looked out, and that's when I saw a shadow. Two people, two men on the grass.
Right. You said you saw shadows, correct?
Shadows.
You did not describe one compared to the other, did you?
No.
Okay. And
The question was two people. I said yes, two people, and he didn't ask me to describe it. So how can I describe it?
okay. And do you recall having a conversation with Mr. Delarionda before today where he took a statement from you?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall whether or not you ever described the two individuals then?
I don't remember.
Okay. So, you look out 2, maybe 3 times. Is that correct? You don't remember exactly how
More
many?
than one time, yes.
Okay. And then at some point after the gunshot, or after a noise that you heard that you believed to be a gunshot, we now know that it was, correct?
Yes.
You looked out and that's when you saw these shadows. Is that
Yes.
accurate?
Yes.
Did you ever go outside?
No.
Was it still dark?
Yes.
And were they on the ground at that point?
It was exactly what the picture was.
Okay. After the gunshot, correct?
After the gunshot, I saw one on the ground, on the grass. I don't remember the other one, where he
Okay.
was.
Well, I want to make sure. Was there a time that you looked out and saw one person on top of the other?
Yes.
Okay. And that is when you're saying you believe that you saw your neighbor out there as well.
Yes.
The neighbor who you don't know, but that was the neighbor who was actually very close to what was going on, correct?
Yes.
If I told you his name, would that help refresh your recollection as to who he may have been?
No.
You don't even know who it was? If I might approach the witness for just a moment. Again, so we get the orientation. This is where you are. This is where the event was. Was the person from this building, from this apartment? Is that the one you saw?
Yes.
Okay, so from 1221.
Yes.
And do you remember where about he was?
He opened his sliding door.
This
The
patio
slide-
area here?
The sliding door, yes.
He was right there?
Right there.
Okay. Facing you and facing the event that was going on?
He couldn't face me because our house is farther that
Gotcha.
way.
Was he seemingly looking at the event that was going on just outside of his apartment?
Yes.
Those two people, now this time that we're talking about, was that when you saw what you identified as shadows?
Yes.
Now, I think what you testified to earlier was, though you could not describe or compare the two back then, correct?
Correct.
Since then, you've had an opportunity to look at some other evidence or information that helped you make a comparison, correct?
Yes.
And what that comparison was that you saw pictures of what we now know to be Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman, correct?
Yes.
Did you see George Zimmerman that night after the shooting?
Did I see him after that night?
Did you see him that night on scene, so to speak, still at the area once the police arrived?
I saw, yeah, my husband was talking to him.
Right, okay. So you were able to see sort of what he looked like?
Yes.
Okay. Describe his face.
Exactly what in the picture, in the news.
The smaller version of this is already in evidence, Your Honor, so I'd just show this to the state and see if they have objections to me
Do you
using
know the
it.
number that it is?
Included in evidence.
Do you know the
Going to show
number?
it. I'm sorry, yes, Your Honor, it is. Number 79. Thank you, Your Honor.
On the 79 is the Oh, it's an evidence that just hasn't been shown yet?
Correct.
Okay.
Let me ask you to just turn with me and look. Is that what George Zimmerman looked like that night when you saw him talking to your husband?
I didn't see his face.
You never saw his face?
Not like with the blood on. It's just his side. I didn't see his face like that. Just the side.
Okay.
Because they were walking on the side. Walk.
Another moment for my I'm going to show the we might see some of the evidence photographs in a moment, Your Honor. I'd like to see it will be 45. Is it going to be easy for you to get 45 to me, or should I? For these purposes, rather than have you find those photographs.
Your Honor, the number, she should have the number, no. If I may interject, Your Honor, just to show where it's 45.
Yes, it may do so.
That would be great. Thank you. 45 then. I might just have a moment here. Have exhibit marked, Your Honor?
And that will be Defense Exhibit R for identification.
Yes, I would move R for identification into exhibit, Your Honor, to previously presented.
Any objections without any waivers?
My objection is to the, I know this video's in, but I object to this, it doesn't, distorts the face. It's not a good photograph.
Okay, counsel will approach
I
with the photo.
apologize.
we have to try and figure out how to accomplish some of this, okay?
Okay.
You had said that you did not have enough of an opportunity to describe the two people that you saw that night on the ground, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But at some later time that you saw some photographs which gave you an opportunity to then compare the two?
Yes.
Tell me what photograph, and I want you to describe it, you saw of Trayvon Martin that you used for comparison. Do you recall what that photograph was?
I believe it was the first shot of the picture that they showed in the news.
Would that have been, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I believe it was bald looking.
And we're talking now about Trayvon Martin, correct?
I'm sorry?
Trayvon Martin, I asked you about Trayvon Martin.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were asking me to describe him.
No.
Oh.
We'll get to that in a minute, but here's what I want you to do. You've told us now that you've had an opportunity after the fact to look at some pictures that gave you an opportunity to make some comparison.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So now I would like to know what the picture of Trayvon Martin was that you used for comparison.
Oh, that's when he was on the hood, and then when I saw him.
Okay. So it was a picture of him with a hoodie on,
Yes.
and that was a face shot,
Yes.
and you saw him to be what?
I saw him to be.
Well, looking at that picture, that was just a face shot, wasn't it?
Yes.
And it was just a hoodie and the shoulders, correct?
Yes.
Maybe some of his chest,
Yes.
sort of looking at the camera.
Yes.
Okay. That was the only photograph that you used for comparison purposes?
Yes.
So you had no idea how tall Mr. Martin was?
No.
Or how heavy he was?
No.
But simply from the fact that he looked in that picture to be whatever he looked to you, you thought that he was small?
Smaller.
Smaller?
Yes.
Okay. And what picture... This is already in evidence, Your Honor. I think is the one we identified as... Excuse me. Right here, 45, if I might. Let me have you take a look at this photograph. This is like 45. Just take a moment. Do you identify who that is?
Yes.
Was that cleaned up as he may have been? Was that the way George Zimmerman looked that night?
He was on the side when I saw him.
Okay. Talking about the size.
Well, he was wearing a jacket, yes.
That, matter of fact, that orange jacket right there, wasn't it?
I think so.
Okay. And that was the jacket that he had on when you saw him talking to your husband? Correct?
I know it's orange. I don't know if it's... Yes.
Okay. Looking at this picture, did you see any other picture of Trayvon Martin for comparison purposes when you compared that picture to the person you saw here? Do you see what I'm saying?
I saw Trayvon Martin picture.
In
I
the
saw
hoodie?
yeah.
Okay.
And I saw his picture.
And in your mind, then, knowing that there was a picture of Trayvon Martin in a hoodie, it was that image that you compared with this image to think that Trayvon Martin was smaller. Is that
Yes.
accurate?
That's how I compared it.
Right.
Maybe I am wrong. I don't know who's bigger now, but that's how I compared it.
That's okay. But it was based upon that comparison, a sort of a headshot and shoulders. I say headshot, I mean sort of taking a picture here. Whatever that, we're going to call it the hoodie shot, okay, for right now? Whatever that hoodie shot was, that was your comparison for identifying the size of Trayvon Martin as compared to George Zimmerman?
I also saw more than one picture of Martin.
Did you see the Hollister photograph where he had a red shirt with a Hollister on it?
I saw the one with him wearing a football.
Oh, okay.
I
And that was him when he was wearing a green football outfit?
think so.
If you had to guess, what do you think his age was during that football outfit photograph?
I know he's 17.
He's 17 at the time of his passing. Do you know when that football photograph was taken?
No, I don't know.
So it is that football photograph, however, that you use for comparison purposes between who was the bigger person, that picture of Trayvon Martin in his football outfit, and a picture or an image similar to this one, number 45. That in your mind was the comparison?
Yes.
Okay. I mentioned a moment ago another photograph that has been distributed concerning Mr. Martin. I mentioned a Hollister photograph. Do you remember seeing that one? Red shirt with the word Hollister on it?
No.
I might have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, you may. We're going to go ahead and break at this time for lunch, and we'll be back at, let's see, about 1:10. So, ladies and gentlemen, during lunch, please do not discuss the case amongst yourselves. Please stay seated. Just 1 minute. Do not read or listen to any radio, television. Do not listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case. Do not use any type of an electronic device to do independent research about the case, people, places, things, or terminology. And please do not read or create any emails, text messages, Twitters, tweets, blogs, or social networking pages about the case. Do I have your assurance you'll abide by these instructions? If you'll please put your notepads face down and follow Deputy Jarvis.
And if you could, describe to the jury from your perspective The noise you heard, what you describe it as best you can.
I heard a howling sound.
And you're actually using the word howling like a dog howling?
Yes.
Okay. When you heard that, what did you do?
I looked out the sliding door.
Okay. When you first looked out, were you able to see something distinctly?
No.
Okay. And why was that?
It was too dark.
When you looked out the first time, did your husband say something to you like regarding whether you should be looking out the window or not, or sliding door?
No.
Okay. Now, at some point, did you hear more noises?
Yes.
Okay. If you could describe to the jury in terms of the noises you heard a second time, and let me backtrack a second, I apologize. You heard a howling sound, you looked out, you didn't see anything, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Then you heard some additional noises?
Yes.
Okay. Were you timing in terms of how long the difference is, or?
No.
Okay. If you can estimate, was that within minutes, seconds, hours, that you heard the first noise, and then you heard the howling sound, and you heard some additional noises?
After I heard the howling sound, I
Yes.
sort of forgot about it. And then I heard a closer sound that sounded like a help sound.
Okay, all right. And
After I heard the howling sound, I forgot about it. And then I heard the yelling of help.
so let's make sure all the jurors heard that. You first heard the howling, and then you forgot about it, and then you heard another voice sounded like
A help.
a help. Okay. And I apologize. Sometimes that microphone, either you're too close or too far. Sometimes it's hard for people to hear. Did you look out the sliding door or the window at that time?
Yes.
And did you observe something going on outside?
Yes.
Okay, all right. If, as best you can, describe to the jury, and I know, let me backtrack a second. I know at some point, how many times total did you look out? More than once? I'm assuming out the,
Yes, more than once.
could it have been 2 or 3 times? Do you have a vivid recollection how many times you looked out?
I know I looked out when I heard the howling sound. I looked out when I heard the help sound. I looked out when I saw two on the ground.
Okay, all right.
2 people on the ground.
Okay, all right. At some point, when you heard the howling sound, you looked out, you didn't see anything. Then you heard voices again, or you heard help.
Mm-hmm.
Did you
Yes.
look out at that time?
Yes.
Okay. At that time, did you see somebody out there? What did you see?
After I heard the help,
Yeah.
I didn't see anything. I sat down and I heard, I don't know, it caught my attention.
Okay.
And when
Tell us if you can, when you say it caught your attention, what do you mean by that?
I guess struggling, I don't know, noises.
Okay.
I looked out. That's when I saw them on the ground, and I saw my neighbor.
Okay, all right. Let me backtrack a second, so make sure the sequence, the jury understands the sequence. You heard the howling sound, didn't see anything. You looked out or you heard some other sound. You looked out, you didn't really see anything, but you heard a struggle outside. If you can elaborate on that, when you say struggle, what do you mean by that?
Like noise,
Okay.
noising, like rumbling.
Okay. Like a rumbling or grumbling, or I don't know.
Like strugglings.
Okay, like a struggle? Okay. And then you didn't see anything. Who else was home with you?
My husband and my daughter.
And what were you all doing that evening?
We were downstairs in the living room.
And obviously, I'm going to ask you about something that happened outside the residence. At that time, when something happened outside, what were you and your husband and your daughter doing at that time?
We were in the living room watching TV, and my husband was fixing the coffee table that we just bought that day,
He was actually building it?
building it in the living room. Yeah.
In terms of the townhouse or townhome, is it a 2-level?
Yes.
And are the bedrooms upstairs?
Yes.
Does your living room area where you were face the backyard of what's been referred to as a courtyard or a walkway? If you were to look out your backyard, do you have a sliding glass door in the back?
Yes.
Okay. And if you were to look out, is there what's been referred to either a dog walk, or a courtyard of some type?
Yes.
Okay. At that time, was it already dark outside?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of the weather conditions, how would you describe them that night?
A little rainy.
Okay. Now, at around 7:05, 7:10, 7:15, did you hear some noise outside?
Yes.
Okay. And then what, you looked up, did you go back and sit down, or what did you do?
After the howling, I looked. I didn't see anything.
Okay.
I heard help.
Okay.
I didn't see anything. I looked out again, and I saw them there, and I saw my neighbor.
All right, so this is the third time in terms of looking out, or whatever time it is, you're looking out, you see him. Tell us what you saw out there at that time.
It was dark, so I know I saw two people on the grass, one laying down, one on top, and I saw my neighbor came out from his sliding door. I remember him saying, "Are you guys okay? Do you want me to call 911?"
And when you say you saw a neighbor that came out from a sliding door, obviously a neighbor means somewhere near where you live. Was it your next door neighbor in the same building you are, across, or to the side, or where was that?
Across.
Okay. And did you know that neighbor's name at the time?
No.
Do you know that neighbor's name now?
No.
Okay. And when you say across, was it directly across from where you are, or was it an angle across?
It was an angle.
Okay. You mentioned the neighbor came out, said something. What happened then?
And that's